Now we're going to talk a little bit about infant and toddler literacy. You'll hear me say words like early literacy in exchange for infant-toddler literacy, just so you know that that means the same thing. So infants can learn a lot about literacy. They can learn how to handle books, how to hold them, how to be respectful with them, and turn pages. They can learn that reading is interesting and fun, particularly if adults bring excitement to it. They can figure out that reading tells us something, that written words are a form of communication, and that reading has certain pacing and intonation. There are characteristics that come with reading. I don't just go blah, 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 blah. I say blah, 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 blah. Babies will demonstrate book babble, which is they might look at books and kind of do their version of blah, blah, blah while looking at the pages. A little bit of mimicry there, trying to understand what it is the adult is gathering from the pages of the book and play act that out. By the second year, by year 2, children really begin to understand the content of the books that are being read to them. And even though our babies can't fully grasp what's being read to them, we know that it is never too early to begin reading to infants. They will build better reading comprehension, reading understanding later, the earlier and more frequently they get read to. So toddlers imitate stories in books after they've heard them, and they can interact with their caretakers to respond to questions during reading sessions. So even if they can't give verbal answers, they can point to things in pictures, they can make sounds, they can often answer yes or no questions, those kinds of things. So when reading books, toddlers can really enhance the reading experience and build or scaffold children's understanding of reading by pointing out the features of the pictures and the text, and also asking children questions about the story. So it might be like, here's the duck is on a bike. What's the duck going to do next? The child may not be able to tell you, but it teaches them how to think about reading, that something's going to happen and they can start to think about that. And then giving children more control as they're ready is really important. Letting them turn pages, letting them hold the book, letting them pick the book out, letting them talk about what they know before you read or after, letting them move around in the book. Sometimes toddlers want to go backwards instead of forwards because they haven't figured out yet the sequence of story, and they don't really know yet that the words on the page are always the same. If they want to go backwards, let them go backwards. That's a really important skill that they're going to learn by going different directions in the book. So symbolic thought is an important piece that is an early literacy skill. And symbolic thought is using any item to represent something in the environment. So obviously, here's my cell phone. I can pick up my cell phone and I can use it as a cell phone, and it's a cell phone. Now, who talks on a phone anymore? So I guess I could text on it, or I could call on it, or I could look something up. This is a real phone. This is not a symbol. This is a phone. But if I pick up my water bottle and I pretend it's a phone, or I pretend to text or swipe through, that's a symbol. The water bottle is a symbol for the phone. But if I pick the water bottle up and drink from it, got a little messy there, then I'm treating it as a water bottle and it's no longer a symbol. I hope that makes sense. So symbolic play is actually a really important early literacy skill development. And the reason is that because it can be a symbol for phone. Hello, hi mommy, how are you? This is a symbol. Later, children can then understand that these words on a page, they are symbols for the words that we speak out loud. So the children who do early symbolic play, often what we call pretend play or sociodramatic play, are ready for reading earlier than children who do not do this play because they understand what symbols are. So if you have children in your world that don't do pretend play, it's really important to get them into it. So we used this example a couple weeks ago in class about the child who always wants to play in the block area and they never want to leave the block area. Now, it might be that that child always wants to build with blocks, but it might be that that child builds with blocks and then uses what they've built to do pretend play. No, we don't have to take that child out of the block area and make them go to the dramatic play area to do dramatic play. Children will do that kind of play wherever. So you can see that that child is doing the dramatic play in the block area around the structures he's created. And you can know that, yes, that child is doing pretend play. They are building up those skills, those symbolic thought skills for later. So we talked about this a few weeks ago, the achievement gap. And we know that this starts early. So these lines represent different things. The blue lines represent children whose parents identified as professionals. The green line are children whose families are working class. And the red line are low-income children, typically in the welfare system. So their family gets food assistance, WIC or SNAP. They might be on TANF. So they're getting social services. So what we see is by 36 months, which is 3 years, the children in professional homes hear far more words than children who are from lower socioeconomic classes. So we really want to, sorry, I jumped ahead early. We really want to think about making sure all of our children get a wide variety of words and types of words that they hear so that they can build their literacy skills. So literacy refers to reading and writing in the written form of language. So speaking isn't literacy. That's language, right? That's what we just talked about before this. Literacy is writing and reading. Early writing consists of primitive marks on paper that can represent words to the child. So a few weeks ago, we looked at some drawing samples and we used that to think about what the child's motor skills were. We can look at early writing that's not drawings of pictures, but we can say, oh, tell me the story. Now write down your story. And we're going to see little marks and symbols, little circles, little lines, little dots that the children are pretending that they are writing. It is very distinctively different from drawing, with the intent to communicate language. It often looks more like cursive than print. Eventually you'll see a mix of letters and made up symbols. So you might see some random circles, lines, and dots along with letters. And typically the first letters you'll see are the letters from the child's name. And these early literacy experiences obviously lay the foundation for future successful reading and writing. So children who have had early reading experiences and are encouraged to construct meaning out of print develop reading skills earlier than children who have not had these experiences. Kind of a no-brainer, huh? So the stages of development are this. First, a child believes that the words that you're saying come out of the pictures. So they see the pictures, they probably don't even notice the words, or if they do, they don't even try to think much about them. And they think, oh, you're making up a story that comes from the pictures. Then they start to see the print and notice that there's something that you're getting from the print that tells the story. Then they memorize that story. You've probably all seen a child who will do this, that they will go through a book and they will say exactly what's on every page. And if you didn't know better, you were sure that they were a 3-year-old that knew how to read. So my cousin Laura is 8 years younger than me. And she was my baby when we were growing up. And her favorite book was 10 Little Monkeys Jumping on the Bed. Or I think it's 5 Little Monkeys Jumping on the Bed. 10 would be really long. And she had come to fully memorize that book. And she would turn every page exactly where she should turn it. She knew every word. She had it completely memorized. And many of my family was fooled into thinking she really could read. I mean, she's a genius, but not that much of a genius. Children then begin to map the story across the print, so they start to be able to map the path of the story and understand how the flow of the story goes. And then another early reading skill is phonemic awareness, which is the ability to hear sounds of words and understand that speech is made up of different sounds. So we start to get things, alliteration comes first. That's like Allie the alligator ate apples. ah, 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 ah. That's alliteration. That tends to come before rhyming. So what's a little bit harder are the end sounds, like cat, bat, mat, flat, dat, etc. So they're ways of hearing sounds, but the alliteration, the first sounds, tends to come before the last sounds with the rhyming. And then we know that this experience, phonemic awareness, can develop highly from experiences with reading because the written language focuses more on alliteration, those first sounds, and making things have that consistently, or rhyming sounds at the end. There's more rhythm to written word in it, so it intentionally teaches these skills. So now I have a follow-up question for you, which is about literacy. Now that we've been through that unit, how do you think you might assess infant and toddler early literacy skills? And I want you to give me 3 ways that with an infant and or toddler, you could figure out what their literacy skills are at a young age.